Hey everybody, it's Josh. I wanted to talk to you all today about why you can trust Jesus Christ and why he is the one true God. Now, I hear from a lot of atheists and non-believers that, well, if you're saying Christianity is true, then all the other religions are true too. Or some people say, well, if I'm going to believe in Jesus, it might as well be believing in the Tooth Fairy or the Easter Bunny. First of all, these are people who do not understand a thing about Christianity. They don't understand a thing about religion. They don't understand a thing about Jesus Christ as a historical man and what Jesus Christ means in people's lives. So, as a religion, why is Christianity so superior to all other religions? Well, it is the only religion where you can have an intimate relationship with the God of the universe. There is no other religion where God himself, the creator of everything, not just a small g god like Zeus, God of the universe came down and walked as a man among the poor, the weak, the oppressed, the people that needed him the most, the people that were most willing to surrender their lives to him because they weren't rich people, they weren't wealthy and powerful, they weren't beautiful people for the most part. Not saying that those people cannot be saved, but it is more likely that the poor, the weak, and the oppressed, and the persecuted, and the sick, they are more likely to surrender their lives to God because they're not clinging to their desires. But see, God came as a man. Emmanuel means God with us. That's the name of the Messiah, Jesus Christ. He came to show us how to live, to show us every single thing we needed to know in life. And still, in this modern era, when we think there's no way a 2,000-year-old book and a 4,000-year-old book of the Old Testament would show us how to live our lives, it absolutely does. Every single problem that we face in life, we can get an answer for in the Bible. Perfectly. It calls to you. It is God speaking to us. See, God speaks to us in a spiritual way, and God speaks to us through the Word. That's how he opens up to us. We have things like Islam and Judaism who follow the Abrahamic religions. It's the same basis. Abraham was the beginning of the Judeo-Christian philosophy of religion. They deny everything about Christ. The Jews deny all the prophecies that were fulfilled by Jesus Christ. The Muslims, they deny everything that Christ said and everything that Christ did, showing that he was God, accepting worship, claiming he and the Father are one. You know, people dropping to their knees saying, "My Lord and my God." There are no angels, there are no prophets who accepted worship. If they did, they would be idolaters. So you have that in the Abrahamic religion. So that's taking out both of the Abrahamic religions right there, other than Christianity. So the Jews, they still do not see the prophecies clear. It points to Jesus Christ being the Messiah. And then you have the Muslims who just deny, basically, if Christianity was true or false, Islam would be negated, because Islam claims that the scriptures and the New Testament are God-breathed words, meaning they are words of God. So then, and I'm going to mainly focus on the major religions. You have the Eastern religions. You have Hindu, the Bhaktars of Hindu, and then you have Buddha from Buddhism. Buddhism is a agnostic religion. It's more of an exploration of self. It's a exploration of the mind and the spirit, and trying to reach an enlightened state of self. And the Hindus believe in a pantheon of gods, but they also believe in that meditation, exploration of self. Now, is that bad? Meditation is not bad at all. In fact, the Bible tells you to meditate on God's word all the time. But when you have the Eastern religions and you have Christianity saying it, the difference is in the Eastern religions, you're having a monologue. You are exploring yourself. You're exploring your own mind. In Christianity, you're having a dialogue, which means you are focusing on and talking to the God of the universe. Now, Buddhism, it's not really something that you say is true or not true, because it is not really making much of a truth claim. It is, but it isn't. Hindus, they just have, you have to look at the literary style it was written in. Now, it's obvious that this is more written in a mythological style. Now, don't get me wrong. You can claim, and there's very good points saying that Genesis 1 through, I believe, 11 or in the Bible is written in a mythological style. It is basically explaining the beginning of everything and why things are the way they are. It is a foundation setting up everything else that's going to happen in the Old Testament and the New Testament. Now, I'm not saying that these things are not true. I'm just saying a point can be made. Hey, maybe this is a mythological style. But the Bible is not a monolith. It is written in so many different literary genres. So you have to look at the literary genres of every single religion, and you have to say, is this something that's trustworthy? If it's written in mythology, then it can be trustworthy in teaching you things about life for sure. I mean, Genesis, the early Genesis, teaches us all kinds of things about life. I believe, and here's just my theory, that it was the creation and a lot of the deeper meanings in life being explained to basically Bronze Age men who most couldn't read or write, most could barely understand anything, and you're going to teach them like some kind of scientific lesson about the creation of the world and all these things. No, it was needed at the time to explain it in the simplest yet most concise points possible. But you have the Hindus who, it's complete mythology. They exist in a place outside of Earth. So I'm not saying that it can't be true. I'm saying it's not what Jesus Christ is. The accounts of Jesus Christ, the Gospels, the literary genre is historical biography. They are accounts of a man who lived, just like the accounts of Julius Caesar or Alexander the Great or all kinds of men in antiquity. Now, the difference between Jesus Christ and everybody else in antiquity is that there are far more documented writings of Jesus Christ than there are anyone in antiquity. Far more. And he's been studied much more than any person. Not only that, but you have the earliest record of their life. So I believe the average of a historical record, like Julius Caesar or the Greek philosophers like Aristotle and Socrates and all them, and then you have Alexander the Great, like I mentioned. Those were usually written around 500 years after they died, the accounts of their lives. While Jesus Christ, we know, was within a couple decades at the very most, if not immediately after he died and rose from the dead. So you have all of this evidence. Not only that, but you have 6,700 original Greek documents of the New Testament. You have even more translated documents. And that is important, because if the Bible was changed, if the Gospels and the epistles and everything were changed over time by the church, they would have had to have gone and found every single hidden document and changed those. They would have had to change all of them. It would have been the greatest conspiracy ever concocted. So those who don't believe that these are actual accounts of Jesus Christ, who don't believe that, or believe that the Bible was changed over time, like a lot of Muslims do and a lot of atheists do, yes, there were things that were missing. But add on to all those Greek and translated documents, add on the fact that the early church fathers, within the first couple centuries of the church, the early church fathers recorded at least 95% of the Gospels within their writings. So even if we didn't ever find the Gospels and didn't have any kind of written record of the Gospels, we would have the early church fathers at 95%. Now that's pretty good. Those are the 5 major religions in the world right now. You have Buddhism, Hinduism, Islam, Judaism, and Christianity. And there are other minor religions that really don't make a dent in the population believing, or the historicity is not even anywhere near legitimate. But I want you to think about the figure of Jesus Christ. I want you to think about who has changed the world more than anyone else. And Jesus Christ, the way he's radically changed the world. I mean, we started the counting of the years after his death. We started to become a better world. And I know that the world is still corrupt. It's still a fallen world. That's not in question. That Jesus Christ even said it was going to be a fallen world. It was going to get so bad that it was like in the days of Noah, when God flooded the world, which was a spiritual attack. In the days before Noah's flood, the fallen angels had come down and laid with the women of the earth and produced, their offspring were these, they were called different things. They were called monstrous. They were called giants. They were called also heroes of old. Now, this is what I believe is the origin of a lot of the polytheistic religions, like Greek and Roman mythology, like Nordic mythology, Norse mythology. I believe that these offspring of the fallen angels and earth women, called the Nephilim, were the small g gods. There were some kind of supernatural beings. Maybe they were the fallen angels themselves and the small g gods. You know, maybe the demigods were the Nephilim, the offspring, and the small g gods were the fallen angels. It's apparent that something was going on, and all the religions in the world seem to corroborate that. We seem to have these accounts of these supernatural beings encountering man all the time, interacting with man all the time. So again, it's not like it's not biblical. You can find biblical meaning for everything. Or you can find it false from the Bible. But I think those are just a few things that, just starting off, I understand that there's many more arguments and there's many better arguments, but I think the radical change that Jesus Christ, how he changed the world. Here's one example. So the Romans, and the Greeks and the Romans, they used to go and throw unwanted babies, like disabled babies or, just babies they couldn't afford to raise. They would go and leave the infants to basically die of exposure out. They would sometimes drop them off a little ledge at this temple and just leave them out there. The early Christians began going and collecting as many of these kids as they could and raising them in their home as good Christians. We saw it sweep like wildfire all over the world. And Jesus Christ came at the exact moment in time when all the different travel ways and all the different trade routes around the known world at the time were opening up. If he would have come, a couple hundred years earlier, it wouldn't have been like that. A couple hundred years later, it would have been, probably too late. He always comes at the perfect time. And you look at all the gods that have been worshipped in human history, and you put them on a timeline, and Jesus is smack dab in the middle of them, which is really wild when you think about it. I want you to think about how Christ has changed the world, because we don't realize how corrupt the world was, because we see, the Dark Ages happen. It was still pretty bad after Jesus Christ came, but it was nowhere near as bad as it was before Christ came. So I want you to think about those things as to who makes the most sense out of every single religion. If you are seeking God, you cannot claim that all the religions are the same. It's ridiculous. Every religion has a truth claim. Every religion is telling you some version of truth that they believe is true. And the only one that makes sense, the only one that stands up to scrutiny, is Jesus Christ. We have found so many historical backings, biblical and non-biblical, but I don't understand why people are they say, it has to be outside of the Bible for it to count. Why? The Bible is not one book written by one author. It is a collection of books. It's a collection of scrolls, really, that people wrote of accounts of Jesus or accounts of whoever. And it makes no sense why you would have to have someone who doesn't believe in Jesus, who encountered him, for you to believe. Because why would you expect someone to see someone rise from the dead, perform miracles or whatever, and still not believe? It happened. It happened, and the Bible said there was plenty who saw and didn't believe. But there weren't that many of them. I mean, I know if I saw something like that, I would take them very, very seriously. Very seriously. Jesus Christ brought forgiveness, radical love, radical peace, and hope to a hopeless people. And it wasn't just the Israelites, it wasn't just the Jews who he brought that hope for, who had been really occupied for almost 800 years before Jesus Christ came by just all kinds of other warring nations, starting with the Babylonians and the Assyrians right after King Solomon. You have the most beautiful, not a conquering king God, not a God who came and showed his power, you must believe in me, a God who came as a suffering servant to show us how to live. So when we suffered in our lives, we would feel closer to him. So that's it for now. I'm going to talk more about this. I know there's so much more, and let me know if you think I've missed something very important. And of course, all the atheists, and I know Muslims won't like this one, but I'll say one last thing about Islam, which I wasn't going to bring up, but if you're looking at Muhammad and you're looking at Jesus Christ, who are you going to trust? Muhammad, unfortunately, yeah, he spoke a good game on peace, especially in the beginning of the Quran. But then when the Jews and the Christians didn't take him seriously, then he got violent and wanted to wipe the Jews and the Christians and every other non-believer of Islam off the face of the earth. He also had a 9-year-old bride. So I think I'm going to follow the sinless, perfect man of Jesus Christ and not this angry man who happened to have a young child bride. I'm not going to say more about him because I don't want to disparage. I love Muslims and I hope that they start looking at the truth. I can give you so many verses where Jesus claimed he was God. I can give you so many verses where Jesus accepted worship, and they still will not listen most of the time. But if you do decide to be brave enough to actually look at the truth, I think you will find something profound. I really do. And I think that you, as a Muslim, will be an amazing Christian. In fact, one of the Nabil Qureshi was a man who was a Muslim who converted to Christianity. He was shunned by his family. His family was shunned from the community. But he didn't care. He had to follow the truth that God laid out before him. I believe that many Muslims are amazingly devout, and I just wish that you would pray for the truth, for a revelation of the truth. And I know that God will show you Jesus Christ if you are genuine about wanting to see the truth. I love you all so much. Let me know in the comments how angry you are at me or what I missed. God bless you all.